Stevens and Price suggest that OCD may be traced back to maintaining healthy resources and to the preparation of weapons that might be used in warfare or hunting. How might we test this idea? We can use a comparative method both by making comparisons with other species and with present living forager societies. With regard to other species, Stevens and Price suggest that repetitive, stereotyped behavior patterns are common, including continuous grooming and cleaning when placed under stress or given little stimulation. In such cases, obsessive preening in birds, hair pulling in cats, and compulsive paw licking in dogs are well-documented behaviors when these animals are put under stress. Perhaps the existence of these ritualized patterns in other species suggests that the roots of OCD are quite ancient. As our species evolved, we developed more complex ways of being anxious, as we are able to conceive of future events and worry about them. These more complex forms of anxiety may have given our ancestors a selective advantage by developing into a verification module. Perhaps one that looks for things to worry about in order to avoid problems before they occur. But they may also have opened the door to the disorder in individuals that have this module at the wrong setting. Considering present living forager societies, anthropologists have recorded how hunter-gatherers take enormous care over their weapons, and how they frequently have complex rituals before setting off on a hunt or to engage in warfare. According to Stevens and Price, this is evidence that we do have a verification module, which prompts us to check and double-check. Depression is a very common mood problem which has been growing at an alarming rate since the middle of the 20th century. Recent World Health Organization reports suggest that it affects 350 million people worldwide and that it is currently the world's third most common cause of morbidity. Psychiatrists and clinical psychologists distinguish between endogenous clinical depression and reactive depression. Reactive depression can be very severe, but is considered to be a normal response to life events that would make anybody unhappy, such as bereavement or disappointment. Clinical or endogenous depression, however, is either considered to be unrelated to life's events or is seen as an overreaction to them in its depth or longevity. Psychologists lump all clinical levels of depression together with serious mood disturbances as affective disorders. The two main subcategories are unipolar disorder and bipolar disorder. In unipolar, or sometimes referred to as major depression, there are generally alternating periods of depression and of relatively normal mood. Whereas in bipolar disorder, sometimes called manic depression, there may be alternate bouts of mania and depression, which may be separated by periods of normal mood. The onset of bipolar disorder is typically in the early 20s. During the manic phase, there are periods of euphoria and high energy where grandiose plans may be conceived. A slightly less extreme form of mania known as hypomania may also occur. Money may be squandered, sex drive is often high, and sleep may become rare. At its extreme, mania may lead to delusions and hallucinations. Frequently, following a period of mania or hypomania, the sufferer becomes exhausted. This exhaustion is frequently followed by a brief period of relatively normal mood before depression sets in. When depression does set in, however, it is usually severe. Most people have experienced some form of depression as a reaction to disappointment or bereavement, but for the bipolar depressive, the sense of bleak hopelessness is so severe that 1 in 8 succeeds in suicide. Aokigahara, also known as the Sea of Trees, is a forest on the northwestern flank of Japan's Mount Fuji, thriving on 30 square kilometers of hardened lava.
Arthur Brennan.
Okay. Where will you be traveling to, Mr. Brennan?
Tokyo.
Would you like to book your return flight now?
No.
All right. I need your bags up here, please.
I don't have any.
Sir, are you sure you don't want anything to eat?
The forest has a historical reputation for paranormal activity and as a home to yurei, or ghosts of the dead in Japanese mythology. In recent years, Aokigahara has become internationally known as one of Japan's most popular destinations for suicide, and signs at the head of some trails urges suicidal visitors to think of their families and contact a suicide prevention association. In 2003, 105 bodies were found in the forest, exceeding the previous record of 78 in 2002. In 2010, it was estimated that more than 200 people had attempted suicide in the forest, of whom 54 completed the act. Suicides are said to increase during March, the end of the fiscal year in Japan. As of 2011, the most common means of suicide in the forest were hanging or drug overdose. In recent years, local officials have stopped publicizing the numbers in an attempt to decrease Aokigahara's association with suicide. The rate of suicide has led officials to place a sign at the forest entry written in Japanese, urging suicidal visitors to seek help and not take their own lives. Annual body searches have been conducted by police, volunteers, and attendant journalists since 1970. The site's popularity has been attributed to Seicho Matsumoto's 1960 novel Kuroi Jukai, Black Sea of Trees. However, the history of suicide in Aokigahara predates the novel's publication, and the place has long been associated with death. Unipolar depression is far more common, with at least 5% of the population suffering from it at some stage. Average age of onset is around 40, and it is far more frequently diagnosed for women than for men. Unipolar depression is frequently associated with feelings of sadness, lethargy, and social withdrawal. Sufferers may be preoccupied with thoughts of death and suicide, but are statistically much less likely to kill themselves than sufferers of bipolar depression. Like anxiety, depression is such a frequent problem for our species that the possibility of it being an adaptive trait has been widely considered by evolutionists. In fact, depression is one of the most researched areas by evolutionary psychologists. Given that a depressed person appears to be acting in such a maladaptive way, how might evolutionists explain this problem? Although evolutionists have argued for some time now that depression serves a function, it is only in quite recent years that a number of specific models have begun to emerge as to what that function might be. In their review of evolutionary explanations for this debilitating problem, Michael McGuire and Michael Raleigh have identified 3 types of models, which have been developed by evolutionists to explain depression. Hypothesize some conditions illustrating how depression was adaptive in the EEA, and how depression might have conferred an advantage to our ancestors. What conditions of the modern world might have caused suffering or difficulties for people with depression?